The student development topic that I'm going to talk about is the development of faith and spirituality. First, I will start with a few definitions, and then I will discuss theories and ideas related to two major theorists, Fowler and Parks. Next, I will talk about the application of these theories and ideas to higher education. The terms spirituality, faith, belief, and religion are often used interchangeably in the U.S. College students and educators struggle with articulating these different concepts. Spirituality is defined as our sense of who we are and where we come from, our beliefs about why we are here, the meaning and purpose that we see in our work and our life, and our sense of connectedness to one another and to the world around us. Belief is a conscious, intellectual agreement with particular doctrines or ideologies. Religion consists of many beliefs and practices of a collective group of people existing over a period of time. Faith underlies both belief and religion, but is also inclusive of secular worldviews. It is our way of finding coherence in and giving meaning to the multiple forces and relations that make up our lives. The development of these terms depends a great deal on how individuals make sense of their identities. Personal identities are the identity components or characteristics people believe are more unique to themselves rather than with a shared group. One can define their personal identity by a number of factors. For example, where they grew up, their faith, their social class, their race, etc. A spiritual identity is considered a personal identity. While collective identities are shared by a group of people with some characteristics in common, for example, native language, country of origin, or religion, it includes category membership, shared beliefs, perceived closeness to other members of the group, and behavioral enactments such as meeting attendance. We consider a religious identity as a collective identity. Religion is an organized system of beliefs, practices, rituals, and symbols designed to facilitate closeness to the sacred or transcendent, foster an understanding of one's relationship and responsibility to others living together in a community. Hence, individuals with a religious identity believe they are members of a religious group. Their identities can vary in terms of their acceptance of belief systems and their endorsement of the importance of the religious values, commitment to the religious group, and practices associated with the religion. In contrast, a spiritual identity is considered a personal identity. It consists of spiritual characteristics unique to the individual rather than shared with a group, and it is not associated directly with feelings of belonging to a valued religious group, although an individual may experience spiritual identity in the context of a religious tradition. Although the first colleges in the U.S. were created to train clergy and ensure that youth received an education that was grounded religiously, public higher education in the last century has been reluctant to address the spiritual and faith development of students, and despite this reluctance, there have been numerous books and articles addressing the development of faith and spirituality in higher education that have appeared over the recent years. In Spec 2005, identified 3 factors that contributed to the avoidance of spirituality in higher education. First, the erroneous belief that the constitutional requirement of separation of church and state precludes any mention of matters that could be construed as religious. And second, the emphasis in higher education on objectivity and rationality. And third, the lack of preparation that most educators have to address the topic of spirituality. The last 2 factors apply equally to private institutions as they do to public institutions. James Fowler was one of the first to address faith using a developmental approach in his 1981 book, Stages of Faith. His theory was based on interviews with 359 people ranging from 3.5 to 84 years old, and Fowler believed that faith and religion are distinct and that faith is more personal and broader than religion. He believed that faith is universal, but individuals' faith expression is unique. The stages of faith in Fowler's theory are invariant, with some individuals never reaching the advanced stages. Fowler explained development as a movement, like a spiral, with each preceding stage as more complex and comprehensive way of understanding one's religious tradition. And I'm going to show you all a video that does a good job explaining Fowler's stages of faith and providing examples and explaining the transitions between the phases. And I'm going to fast forward to the beginning and start with the explanation of the stages.
Faith and religion interchangeably. The following are the 6 stages of Fowler's faith development theory, including a pre-stage. Throughout the rest of this video, we will be sharing examples of each of the stages, as well as a transition stage that Fowler includes as well. During pre-stage 1 or stage 0, everyone rolls their faith in relation to their caretakers. This is the person's primal faith in actions and the first impression they have of God. In stage 1, intuitive projective faith, toddlers develop their perception of God based on stories and pictures the family has introduced them growing up. This stage starts when a child begins language development. In stage 2, called mythic literal faith, children and sometimes adults accept the stories that they have been told by others in their life without question. These form the basis of their personal beliefs without reflecting on their own thoughts. This usually begins around ages 6 to 7 and can extend into adulthood. Synthetic conventional faith usually begins during adolescence, when teens' cognitive development allows them to think abstractly and integrate multiple points of view. They take ideas from their family, peers, media, and their religious community into consideration, although they cannot critically evaluate their faith. They rely on support from others to affirm their decisions. Stage 4, individuative reflective faith, usually occurs during late adolescent or early adulthood, when one takes responsibility for his or her own commitments and beliefs. During this stage, the self no longer relies on external sources of authority. Many people who go off to college, for example, encounter for the first time people with very different beliefs and values, and this often drives them to critically examine the value they grew up with from their family and church. Stage 5, conjunctive faith, involves recognizing one's deeper self. This usually occurs during one's midlife. People in this stage are willing to engage in dialogue with those with other faiths, knowing that they might learn something that will allow them to correct their own truths. People in stage 5 are learning how to engage with some type of faith beyond their rational control, and they recognize partially true aspects of their faith and choose not to engage with them. Stage 6, universalizing faith, is extreme universalizing faith. Few people ever achieve this stage. Some include Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., and Mother Teresa. People of this stage are able to sacrifice their own well-being to that of their cause. These people's contributions to society are so radically different from the views of the views of the world. They risk their own safety in order to help those who cannot help themselves. Fowler indicated that the process of faith development was instigated by some sort of dissonance between an experience and a perceived reality. This can be compared to other theorists' use of the term crisis. This disconnect causes a person to transition from one stage of faith development to another. The transition is by no means automatic, however. Fowler indicated a period of transition that could be split into 3 stages that occur between each stage of faith development. The first transitional stage, called bending, is indicated by 4 experiences: disengagement from something that used to give life meaning, disidentification from your old sense of identity, disenchantment with your view of reality, and disorientation, caused by the precious 3 feelings: Precious 3 feelings.
The second transitional stage is the neutral zone, where a person is living through what leaving their old way of thinking really means. Then, a person can experience the navigating phase and begin to create their new world. This is a phase in which a person needs a lot of support from a mentor or a spiritual guide.
Some scholars have criticized Fowler's stages, saying that there was little support for the stages. These are some critiques about Fowler's theory. Also, his assumption that individuals should be pushed toward advanced stages and the existence and definition of stage 6, which is universalizing fate, has been criticized since few examples exist of individuals actually reaching this stage and its disconnection with other stages. Also, some have criticized that his sample was ethnically and religiously biased and that the cross-sectional nature of his research limited conclusions related to development. Also, he developed his theory and then collected data to support it rather than the other way around, and that his definition of fate is too generic. Sharon Parks also developed a theory of faith development, and her theory is based on her professional experiences as a teacher, counselor, college researcher, and her workplace and religious environments. The idea of her theory is that young adulthood prompts self-conscious reflection on life's meaning. She defines fate as the activity of seeking and discovering meaning in the most comprehensive dimensions of our experience. Faith is validated through lived experiences, which makes itself publicly known through one's decisions, obedience, and courage. During young adulthood, individuals are consumed with questions regarding purpose, careers, and belonging. They are also concerned with the world. They want to make it a better place, but they're worried about their ability to make an impact. In 2000, she expanded her initial model by identifying 4 periods associated with development. These are adolescence or conventional, young adult, tested adult, and mature adult. Her model also included 5 forms of knowing that occur within the 4 periods of development. These are authority bound, which occurs early during the adolescent stage. Individuals place their trust in known authorities such as parents, religious leaders, teachers, etc., or impersonal authorities such as media or cultural figures. Individuals in this stage have little tolerance for ambiguity. Unqualified relativism occurs when adolescents begin to realize that many forms of reality exist. This shift can occur either gradually or abruptly, in an uncomplicated way, or through challenging processes. As individuals move through this stage, they see that not all options are equally valid and that those based on evidence tend to have more substance. And then probing commitment occurs during young adulthood and is characterized by short-term commitments based on seriously, critically aware exploration. These commitments often center on future plans related to relationships, careers, and faith. Tested commitment. As individuals advance in adulthood, their commitments become more secure. And then convictional commitment. So in midlife or mature adulthood, a new form of deep commitment may arise that many call wisdom. This is a result from actively exploring the complexity and mystery of life. During this stage, individuals possess both a deep commitment to their understanding of truth and the ability to recognize and appreciate the truth of others. Parks' model is a spiral and nonlinear model. In addition to the forms of knowing that occur within the periods of development, there are also forms of dependence and forms of community. For the sake of time, I'll briefly touch on these. First, forms of dependence. Parks believed that emotion plays an important part in faith development and that examining changes in dependency among others provides a way to evaluate the role of affect in faith development. So dependent or counter-dependent. In adolescence, individuals rely on authorities to determine how they should feel about life events. This is challenged when they want to explore other possibilities, and their response, counter-independence, which is still a variation of dependence, because they are reacting against the positions of authorities rather than creating new truths for themselves. The fragile interdependent stage develops during young adulthood, and Parks distinguishes between interdependence and independence by criticizing the emphasis our culture has placed on being able to function alone without a connection with others. Interdependence balances others' views with one's own views. This is a stage in life when mentors are critical. Confident interdependence. Over time and through encouragement, individuals become increasingly confident in their identities. Interdependence. This stage is around midlife or as a mature adult when one has a strong confident sense of themselves, which leads to new understandings of faith. Individuals see the value in others' beliefs and perspectives without challenging their own values. And there are 5 forms of community. People need familiar and dependable networks of people or communities to explore themselves and their values. Everyone experiences tension between the need to find themselves and the need to be in a relationship with others. This tension is resolved in multiple ways, which Parks identifies as the different forms of community. Conventional community is when adolescents are dependent upon others to define themselves and their fate. Individuals often take on the values and cultural norms of the significant people in their lives. Diffuse community is when adolescents begin to explore new ideas and ways of being. Their social groups start becoming uncomfortable. Relationships can be difficult to maintain during this stage while one's views are constantly changing. And then mentoring community. Parks stresses the importance of mentors for young adults. Mentors are the ones who support young adults as they distance themselves from the beliefs of their past. And self-selected group. When adults seek out communities of people that share their beliefs. And finally, open to other. Usually this happens past midlife when individuals seek out people whose values differ from their own. So now how this is applicable to higher education. Higher education is a place where young adults benefit greatly from mentoring relationships. Mentoring communities help assist individuals in developing worth dreams. The formation of a worth dream is the critical task of young adult faith. Higher education institutions are one example of mentoring communities, and others include workplace, families, and religious institutions. Faculty have a major responsibility for guiding students' spiritual lives by creating communities of imagination where students can be challenged and supported. Higher ed institutions should allow students to feel welcome and safe and provide experiences that encourage and allow them to explore. In particular, student affairs leaders should be comfortable with their own spirituality so they can guide and mentor students through the development of their identities. Neither Parks or Fowler captured how college students struggle with religious beliefs and spirituality. Also, neither theory specifically addresses spirituality as it relates to minorities and their identities versus those that are privileged in society at higher ed institutions. So in 2011, Aston et al. Published Cultivating the Spirit, How College Can Enhance Students' Inner Lives, which is based upon the results from the College Students' Beliefs Value Survey. And the book focuses on how students change spiritually and religiously during college years, and it identifies ways in which colleges can contribute to this developmental process. Aston et al. Conducted a pilot study which included 3,700 participants, and then a study in the fall of 2004 which included 112,000 participants, and a follow-up study in 2007 in which 15,000 participants completed. They also conducted focus groups and interviews. They concluded that students' religious engagement declines in college, but their spirituality increases. Students grow in their connections to others and willingness to be more open-minded and accepting. Growth in spirituality is linked to other positive outcomes, including the facilitation of strong student leaders, improved academic ability, and college satisfaction. College environments are critical to the facilitation of spiritual growth, particularly through opportunities such as study abroad or service learning. Religious identity development. So religious identity is collective identity and spiritual identity is an individual identity. Numerous scholars have identified emerging adulthood, adolescence, and or college years as a key time in the development of a religious identity. Religious identities are connected to spirituality, ethnicity, culture, race, and nationality. 84% of people in the U.S. claim a religious identity, and 92% report a belief in the existence of a God. So why are higher education institutions reluctant to engage in student development theory and practice related to religious identity? The founder and president of the Interfaith Youth Corps argued that higher education ignores students' religious identities as critical aspects of individual and group diversity. Thus, the avoidance of religious identity and the development of faith in higher education is a disservice to students and society as a whole. The chapter went through a couple of good examples of religious identity development, and I want to provide a summary of one of those examples. Peake, a religious sociologist, performed a qualitative study of second-generation Muslim American college students' religious identity processes and development immediately after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. She performed interviews, focus groups, and observations with 127 Muslim students. She created a 3-stage model of religious identity development. First, stage 1 is defined as religion as ascribed identity. Most participants were raised in religious homes, and their religious identity was ascribed to them by their families and communities. Next, stage 2 is defined as religion as chosen identity. This is when the Muslim youth become aware of their values, norms, and beliefs. Participants in this study described it as only natural to start to question ideas of their religion and hence re-examine aspects of their identity after the 9/11 attacks. Last, stage 3 is defined as religion as declared identity. In response to the 9/11 terrorist attacks, students deepen their faith and religious identity. As a result, many began praying more, and they were also faced with increasing questions about their religion. So they studied their religion more and felt like they became expert Muslims. So in summary, Fowler and Park's work has been imperative in the study of student development. Although the theories and theoretical constructs in this chapter have advanced the knowledge on religion and spirituality, still more work needs to be done. More research is needed on how students' race and social class mediate spirituality and religion on campus. Also, little is known about non-religious, racially minoritized, low-income, LGBTQ students, or students with disabilities. Higher ed institutions are still reluctant to address student development in the areas of spirituality and religion, which is a disservice to students. Student affairs leaders need to do a better job of addressing student spirituality. Classrooms can be excellent environments to promote students' development and making sense of larger questions of life. Thus, higher education needs to begin to focus on the development of student spirituality and religion and hence their identity. References and done.